In this video tutorial, we're going to be covering some of the things that are happening on the iPad as far as the information and interface and editing. I also want to point out that is the exact same thing on the iPhone, only this simulator gives you the ability to see a lot more. Obviously, you can see as the text is not that good. It's a low resolution in the simulator. If you're looking at your own iPad, obviously it'd be very clear. Now, on the iPad and iPhone, you would be using the touch uh, things to do different things like zooming in, zooming out, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I cannot do that in the simulator, so I'm not going to attempt that. What I want to show you is basically using this simulator to uh, show you how to edit using the keyboard and other things that are related to that. One of the things I want to start out by while I'm looking at it and recalling this is that if you're exporting records from the file, you can do that in the iPad or iPhone. But for import, this is only done on desktop and on the cloud. The reason being is that the iPad doesn't have the capability of importing. It's just not one of the things that Apple has tried to breach and do. So it is not available for you. But you can print from here. You would obviously be able to use the interface where the pop-up would bring up the information as far as the things you're doing. It's going to look a little different than on the desktop machine that we were using to simulate before. For example, in the records, let's go through these. If you go in here, it's going to allow you to do the current set of record or the found set. Current record is one record. So I'm looking at this. If I was looking at Bill Holland's record, that's the only one that would print. If I want to do a found set, basically I would take and do a find, gather the found set like on a list view, cover the records to make sure it's what you want, and then go ahead and click in here when you get ready to print. And what it'll do is it'll set up the screen and the number of pages that you want to actually print. And this is for each print set. So if you're going to only print one record per page, that's what you would do. Page range, as far as you can set a page range. If there were a lot of pages and you wanted to print from 2 to 10, for example, you would do that in the page range over here. And it would say all records from 1 to 5 page, and this tells you how many are actually in the current set. And then you could do a from and to from 1 to 5, or you can do 1 to 10, or whatever you want to do as far as in this particular one here. Paper size, straightforward. It has a more if you want to add more, but it has all the standard things. And if you move up and down, you'll see that you can add additional data. And when you put a checkbox or check in there for the one you want, like if you wanted A4, you would click it and or tap it in this case, and then you could have more where you can go in there and edit it. There's an awful lot of them in here that you can pick from as far as the way you wanted to print it. Let's go back over to the print set. The orientation is either portrait or landscape. If you click it, that's what it's going to do. If you have a printer that allows scaling, you could scale it to 25 to whatever you want, or you can put a custom in there. Now, what happens in a lot of cases, if I'm using this, I want to maybe use it in different ways. I could take this down to like 70%, and that'll give you a good print on a piece of paper if it's a very large screen. Now, one of the things you have to recognize is when you're in the application that any screen that can be printed would be like an 8.5 by 11 or A4 or whatever it is. That would be the size that the data in here is set up for. And if you're scaling it, say for example, is over or under the actual area that's being printed, when you go ahead and print it, you can change the scale so that it exactly fits the print of paper that you want to use. Because in most of the cases, these are set for 8.5 by 11, but scaling allows you to scale up and down to fill the paper or reduce the size of the image if it is over the size of the paper that you're working with. Dot image, this is at 150 as a default, and you can go all the way up to 6 or full DPI if you want to do that. In this case, it's set for 150. Most people are going to be at 300 or 600 depending on the kind of output you want. PDF, this is really nice. What you can do is you can actually print a PDF document based on the information that you're looking at the screen. And of course, most cases that's text. Or if it's a screen view where you're looking at an image and you want to make a PDF of it, you can do that. You can also email a PDF, which is really nice. We'll talk about that later. So let's go ahead and cancel out of here. One of the next things we're going to be looking at, if you want to export, I'm just going to give you a quick look at what it looks like. It comes up just about like it did before. In this case, it's a CSV, and if you want to change to something else, you're going to have to go down and pick whatever it is that you want as far as like in this case it says comma separated, so CSV. You would go down here and you can do tab, which is probably the most preferable one. You don't want commas around everything unless you have to have those. Even better is to do an Excel workbook, which is an XLSX. HTML would be something you would be using for a website, and merge is something like a word processor would use, similar to Office. You would put it in there and you'd make a merge file out of it. Typically that's usually, if you're merging, you might want to do that with two fields where you're either doing something like a listing or something like that to take data out, like for example first name and address. You could merge them together and it would be first name and address. On exporting the fields, you can pick the fields by putting a check in the radio buttons here, and that's the fields that would be exported. And those would be the only ones that would be exported. You can either deselect them or select all to select all the stuff in the list. And then you have the ability to go ahead and make changes. Say, for example, I send them out as an Excel. I can then alter these in Excel and move them wherever I want to as far as fields are concerned. So let's go here and say done. And the next thing we're going to do is use layout formatted. You can do that. And then when you continue, that's what it's going to do. It's going to export the records. All records in the current found set will be exported. So let's go cancel out of here. And print we did exporting. Now obviously, like I said, you cannot do importing. Okay, in this screen, the next thing I want to show you is if I click into a field, and you'll see that it'll bring it up. It'll carry the records up from the bottom and allow you to go to the keyboard. Keyboard allows you to go to a previous field by clicking here, or you can go to the next field and next again, and it moves and navigates all through the screen. For example, it's bringing down drop down list and values, and then I can go to the top of the screen, the top record, and go next, and then top. It'll go back to the top, and of course you see the different things you can insert in that screen. Now this is kind of important. Let's go ahead and move to a different field. In that field, you'll see it highlights. If you tap and hold down, it'll bring up this thing: cut, copy, paste, delete, look up, share, paste text only, and style. Now, one of the things, if you're in a text field, you'll see it's going to happen a little different. I'm going to click, I'm going to let go, and it'll say select all, paste only, and style. Now, style allows you to do something that's really nice. Say, for example, in the middle of this, I wanted to change some of the text and make it bold or underline or whatever. Then I would use style, and style will allow you to do the size of the points and things like italic, underline, and so forth, and the size of the text in there. So you can do a lot of editing and make things look better if you wanted to do some special input. The next thing is, in the current record set, how many records are in the current set? If you take this little bullet site and click on it or tap on it, you're going to see this is record 2 of 5, and there's 5 in the found set. These are not going to be available on the simulator because the simulator can't do any of these things on the simulator. But these would be available if you wanted to show omit and omit a record. You could do that when you're in the found set. Typically you would do that on a list view. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at, let's go ahead and click off of that. If you're in a less than all the records set, or you want to navigate between records, you can do that using these arrows to navigate backwards and forwards between the records. Do not use these unless you have a question and you need help where you're having issues in your records. This would add a record, this would delete a record. If I deleted this parent record, I would orphan all the records that are attached to this and cause problems and maybe even damage the database. Do not use these. Done would bring this to an end as far as editing. You have the ability to bold, italic, and underline, just like if you do on a regular iPad. If you type in a word, it will do the next word that it expects you to use. You have a set of 3 possible different ones you can tap on to add the next text in here. So if I went over here where record was, and you wanted to start the next thing, I would, and so forth, you could just create a sentence almost by just tapping on the different fields. And of course, obviously the entire database is set up so that you can use it. If I wanted to do things like this, and say, for example, I wanted to put that in there, I could do it. If I wanted to move the keyboard down, or say I'm done here, and then go back in and click on it again, it comes back up with the current keyboard that you're using style-wise. You can make this keyboard go down by clicking here. You can actually talk text in here. So this is kind of fun. Let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do this. We're going to click. I'm not sure if it'll work on the simulator, but we're going to try it. It says enable dictation, and I'll say enable dictation. And I will click in here. In this case, the simulator can't do it. But that's what would happen. It would start, and you can dictate in this field as far as the data that you want to add to it, which is something that very few people realize you can do. Obviously uppercase and then numeric value. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll drop out of here and put this down. By the way, if you do narrating, in some cases you can actually have this read it. On the iPhone, there's another option in here that says speak. And if you click on speak, all the text that you highlighted will be spoken by the computer. If I want to say this and leave it down here at the bottom, I could as far as editing is concerned, but the keyboard, it'd need to come up. I need to say done and it goes away. And then you're back into just looking at the screen or doing exporting the screen or whatever you want to do as far as sending it in an email or whatever. If you have questions, additional questions, and you need to contact us, go to our support site at ontargetsolutions.biz and we'll answer your questions for you. Hopefully this course is taking care of all your questions, but if you need to, keep in mind that you always have free technical support with your application, and you can answer or ask any question that you have. Thank you.